Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. This is Scott Reisch of Crime Talk, and thank you for tuning in. Boy, do we have a busy docket. First, where was I last week? Second, a Harvey Weinstein trial update. Third, a weird case from Idaho that somehow moved to Hawaii. Fourth, a case out of New York involving a New York City Police Department cop, which should be captioned, "Why don't you pick on somebody your own size?" Fifth, the Kobe Bryant helicopter case. Is there any criminal liability? And what's coming up next? Let's talk about it. Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. This is Scott Reisch of Crime Talk, and thank you for tuning in. First, if you have not already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. If you like our video, hit the like, and please leave us a comment. I am interested in what you have to say, and I like reading the comments and seeing what others are saying about what we're discussing. First, where was I last week? Well, it was a crazy week. I thought I would be able to go live, and it just simply did not happen. I was at the National Trial Lawyers Convention in Miami Beach, Florida last week, and it was just crazy busy. And boy, did we learn a lot of stuff. We had some great speakers. Benjamin Brafman was there. He was one of the original Weinstein attorneys. He's the one that fought so hard to get these emails that the defense is now using. He's off the case, irreconcilable differences. Jose Baez was present, talked about, not really about the Weinstein matter, other than he was thankful to be off that case. And also the fact that he talked about the Hernandez case, which there is a documentary now on Netflix, and we're actually going to talk about that tomorrow because I've watched it. It's interesting, and, can you make the leap? Can you not? We'll talk about that tomorrow as well. Was also able to see attorney F. Lee Bailey. Obviously, Mr. Bailey is now 87 years old, but man, he still has got it. He is sharp. He may not have a law license anymore, but he is very, very sharp. He obviously was famous for the OJ case and many, many before that. He has represented lots and lots of people, and he did it in a time where you don't have all the rules and you don't have the social media aspect that you have today. But he had high-profile cases before really anybody else did. Roy Black, another very good and excellent attorney from Miami, represented Rush Limbaugh. Talked about some cases down there where literally the judge has found that the police officers had lied, the FBI agents specifically had lied and been completely untruthful, but, they didn't intend to lie. Yeah, you figure that one out too. Mark O'Mara, who was the outgoing president of National Trial Lawyers, was also there, and he was famous for his representation of George Zimmerman. That's when I first met Mark O'Mara, about 5 years right after that trial, and he is still plugging away, as he says, quality control on the Constitution, making sure the police and the government do it correctly. So a lot of people don't like a lot of those attorneys out there, but if you are in trouble, they are some of the top people you would want to represent you. And of course, maybe that would include yours truly as well. So that's where I was. And then I had to make an unexpected trip to Grand Junction, Colorado for a new matter that took a hell of a lot longer than it was supposed to. So we didn't get back. And not to mention, Kyle was sick with the flu. He probably had that coronavirus. Thank God he is better now, so we are back. Next on the docket, the Harvey Weinstein case. Now, for those of you who don't know, Harvey Weinstein is accused of doing lots and lots of bad things. He is accused of sexually assaulting people that he had worked with, that people that he met briefly and was holding, quote, the casting couch interviews. The defense in the case is basically that these incidents were, in fact, consensual. For lack of a better term, he wanted to have sexual relations. They wanted something that he could give. And in a roundabout way, the defense attorneys are either saying it was completely consensual in the sense that they all were having consensual relations, or if anything, they haven't really come out and said it, that's, that somebody was, exchanging sex for something in return. And some of the information that has come out has been rather graphic. I won't talk about it here because you know how YouTube gets on their whole monetization issues if we get too graphic. But perhaps we can do a Patreon live where we don't have the censorship of YouTube, where we could talk about the specifics. But let's get into it. There are 6 women testifying against Mr. Weinstein in his trial. And obviously, Mr. Weinstein is seen as the poster boy for the Me Too movement, which kind of goes back to my general rule and advice. Don't put yourself in bad situations. I mean, Mr. Weinstein, what were you doing? I mean, my recollection is he was married during most of this time. Why are you doing this? And let's face it, people don't have meetings in their hotel suites, okay? Let's just get that straight. If you're a guy and you're inviting a female up to your hotel suite for a meeting, you're a pig, okay? And the female, or vice versa, whatever the relationship is, you don't have meetings in hotel suites, okay? You should have it in the restaurant. You should have it in the lobby. You should have it at somebody's office. Meetings aren't held in hotel suites if there's not something nefarious, weird going on. Let's just put it that way. It's just the reality of it, okay? And you can say, oh, it could have been completely innocent, but let's face it. Somebody has less than honorable intentions if they're asking you to come to their hotel suite. I have traveled a lot. I have traveled with other attorneys, associates over the years. Not once have I said, come to my hotel room and let's have a meeting, have a client meet me in my room. It just doesn't happen. You don't do it. It's not appropriate. And these people put themselves in these situations and then they wonder why they're in trouble because it looks bad. Perception is reality. All right. And now Mr. Weinstein, he's charged with 5 felony counts, including rape, predatory sexual assault for his behavior against several women. Now, several women are testifying in what they call 404B evidence. This is evidence of other misconduct that's brought in to show a pattern, all right? So I want to read you what is the 404B statute and the 404A statute really quick because I think it gives a better explanation of what is being given in the media as of right now. Rules of evidence, okay? And some people have disagreed with me about what the rules of evidence are. I may not be the smartest man in the world, but one thing I have done and learned over almost 20 or 25 years of practicing law is the rules of evidence. Those are the rules that we play by in a courtroom. That's what you use to keep evidence out and you keep evidence in. And I have won many a case simply because the government thought they could get evidence in and I kept it out pursuant to the rules of evidence. Rules of evidence 404. Character evidence not admissible to prove conduct. And then the exceptions. 404A. Character evidence generally. Evidence of a person's character or a trait of his character is not admissible for the purpose of proving that he acted in conformity therewith on a particular occasion. All right? So let's say you are a burglar and you are charged with burglarizing house C. The previous burglaries to houses A and B should not be admissible. That where, let's say, for example, you have pled guilty or you were found guilty of committing those burglaries. Even if you haven't been committed to it, convicted of those burglaries in house A and B, you still can have the evidence brought in. So, 404B, the exception, other crimes, wrongs, or acts. Evidence of other crimes, wrongs, or acts is not admissible to prove the character of a person in order to show that he acted in conformity therewith. It may, however, be admissible for other purposes such as proof of motive, opportunity, intent, preparation, plan, knowledge, identity, or absence of mistake or accident, provided that upon request by the accused, the prosecution in a criminal case shall provide reasonable notice in advance of trial or during trial if the court excuses pretrial notice on good cause shown on the general nature of any such evidence it intends to introduce at trial. So what does that really mean? Obviously, if the government wants to bring in this other evidence, because you can't bring it in to say, oh, look, he's done it before. He is a bad man. He's done it on opportunities A and B, and now C, he must have done it. Everyone is allowed to be tried on the evidence that is before them on these charges, right? Let's say you're a habitual burglar, and maybe they are pursuing you because of that, and you say, you know what? I've done A and B, but I didn't do C. You would find that to be extremely prejudicial, okay? Now, most district attorneys, and I say most because some get carried away with 404B evidence, they try to bring in the kitchen sink, all right? And some judges, like, if your case is so great, what do you need 404B evidence for? And that is going to be the argument that the Weinstein attorneys are going to make in closing arguments. You've heard from the complaining witnesses. You've heard from the victims in this particular case who did not come forward early on, who had continuing communication and contact and relationship with Mr. Weinstein afterwards, who didn't go to the police until much, much later, until the articles came out about Mr. Weinstein. And they're going to say that those charges are so weak that the government has to bring in these other incidences, which we believe are also consensual because they kept in contact with Mr. Weinstein. They act for employment opportunities from Mr. Weinstein. And they had cordial email interactions with Mr. Weinstein over the years. They're all consensual, and these people are really just looking for revenge or a money payout ultimately in a civil case against Mr. Weinstein if that's available. And so 404B evidence can cut both ways. Yes, it looks really bad. I'm telling you, I've had cases where 404B evidence come in and it's just might as well be stabbing you in the heart. It's that bad. And other times you get them say, hey, if this case, the one you have to decide upon, was so good, why do they need to bring this in? Because their case is so weak and they're trying to do what they're exactly prohibited from doing, which is bringing in bad conduct evidence. For the defense, it's tough because now you have to defend not only against two victims, but the other three that they're allowed to bring in, and basically you're defending against those 5 charges. So very, very difficult, not impossible. It's a silly rule in my book, but the prosecution does that. Now, the defense can also bring in bad character evidence without having to give notice to the defense because it doesn't just come in automatically. There's usually a hearing that certain elements have to be proven to be 404B evidence, that it's relevant, that it's probative value, and its probative value is not outweighed by its prejudicial effect. Although lots of 404B evidence is prejudicial, the question is, if it's so prejudicial, it's so bad, it results in an unfair trial. If Mr. Weinstein is in fact convicted, I would guarantee you that one of the elements or one of the arguments on appeal is going to be the admission of 404B evidence, and that resulted in an unfair trial. We'll see how this goes over the next couple of days. There are now 7 men and 5 women on the jury. We will have to see, obviously we don't know who the jurors are. If we're not in the courtroom, we can't see their reaction. But I'm assuming that they're going to be very attentive because they know and understand the consequences for this case. Now, next on the docket, let's talk about a weird case that started in Idaho. And there just seems to be a string of dead bodies left and right. And it's very, very odd to me what the hell is going on here and why these people cannot state where the children are. There are 2 individuals, Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow. Now, they left Idaho when police started asking questions about Lori Vallow's children. One is her natural child, and one was adopted. And they have not been seen in 3 months. Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow left Idaho, and they actually went to the island of Kauai in, obviously, the state of Hawaii. Daybell and Vallow got married weeks after the first wife, Tammy, had died months earlier of what authorities first listed as natural causes. Now, they have since exhumed the 49-year-old body to conduct an autopsy, which has not been released just yet. Now, less than 3 months earlier, Vallow was widowed when her fourth husband, Charles, was shot to death by her brother in what police initially described as self-defense situation, but is now being looked at once again. What is even more bizarre is that the brother-in-law has since passed away as well. And what caused the alarm is that Vallow's children, 17-year-old Tylee and 7-year-old JJ, who has special needs, had not been seen for months. Police in Rexburg, Idaho, publicly pleaded with the couple to disclose the children's whereabouts, but the couple has refused to cooperate. The police believe that the children are in danger. The police in Idaho have also initiated a child protection case, and the court has ordered that they need to produce the children in 5 days. Now, very unlikely that they're going to appear, and the worst that can happen is they can be held in contempt. There also appears to be no evidence that Tylee and JJ ever traveled with the couple to Hawaii. It's alleged that Lori Vallow became obsessed with Chad DeBell's book on doomsday scenarios and near-death experiences, which was apparently marketed for a Mormon audience, and the two ultimately bonded quite closely, obviously because now they're married. So after Lori's ex-husband, Charles, was killed by her brother, who later died of unknown circumstances, Lori then moved to Idaho, where DeBell also lived. And yesterday, the police in Kauai served search warrants on these two individuals for their car, looking for any evidence of the children that are there. And obviously they found none at the house or in the car, which makes people believe that something quite tragic has happened to these particular children. But short of finding a body or one of these two individuals confessing that they maybe did something to the children and nobody coming forth saying the children are here, there's really no way for the police to charge them with any sort of misconduct with the children. Obviously, both of these individuals have a right to remain silent so that even if they were to be questioned by the court, they would assert their Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination. You cannot use one maintaining their silence with police questioning to establish probable cause. You can't go to the judge and say, children are missing. We attempted to talk to them. They asserted their Fifth Amendment rights. We have no idea where the children are. We have no idea if they're safe with somebody else. Nothing along those lines. Their silence is not enough to get probable cause for an arrest warrant. And no prosecutor could prosecute this case at any particular time because they don't know that the children are, in fact, deceased or in any type of danger whatsoever. This is a weird case. It's got some twists and turns of obviously a string of dead people, talk of this gentleman having sort of a cult group and following of doomsday scenarios. And I've had some cases, or I had one recently, of kind of a doomsday conspiracy, child's dying, and I'm telling you, it is different, all right? And this case is going to get even more bizarre before it gets to the point where somebody's charged or goes away. We'll be following that one much more closely because it just doesn't make any sense. Next on the docket, a case out of New York City. And the prime suspect is a now former NYPD cop, Michael Vallow. And he is accused, along with his fiancée, and obviously they're given the presumption of innocence until they plead guilty or until they are convicted by a jury trial. And it is alleged that they tortured his 8-year-old autistic son, even mocking the child as he collapsed from hypothermia, which ultimately claimed his life. Michael Vallow, 40, a 15-year veteran with the NYPD, and his fiancée, Angela Polina, 42, tried to make it look like they were the perfect couple. They were living with Vallow's 3 sons and Polina's 3 girls, each obviously from previous relationships. What really was going on was anything but perfect. In fact, it sounds like potential torture. It's alleged that Vallow and Polina allowed the 8-year-old to reside in the garage when it was about 19 degrees outside. Apparently, there was extensive surveillance in the house, and there were some recordings when they discovered that the child was obviously not doing very well, and there's some statements and admissions by the girlfriend basically saying that he's hypothermic. At one point, Polina apparently walked into the garage and asked Valva what he was doing. Valva said, "I'm effing suffocating him. That's what I'm doing," prompting Polina to say, "Take your hands off his mouth. There are people everywhere," according to police. The police apparently responded about 9:40 that morning after Valva reported that his son fell in the driveway while waiting for school. When they arrived, Valva was performing CPR on his son in the basement. It's alleged that Valva tried to put him in a warm bath to raise his body temperature before calling the police. Apparently, the 8-year-old did in fact suffer head and facial injuries that were not consistent with Valva's account that a medical ruled the boy's death as a homicide, with a major contributing factor of hypothermia. What is more disturbing, and cases that you see more and more often, is that people have warned the state, and in this particular case, the ex-wife of Valva stated that she was concerned for the children's safety for years. In fact, she set up her own Twitter account trying to let everybody know. But apparently because he was a police officer, no one would in fact listen. She stated that the children would come home and saying, "I'm hungry," that they wouldn't let me eat because I didn't ask politely enough for it. She said she has warned people in court proceedings, quote, "My children are going to die from the sadistic and abusive care of Michael Valva and Angelina Polina." Valva and Polino pleaded not guilty at their arraignments and are being held without bail. As a defense attorney, I have represented people that have been accused of crimes against children. The reality of it is, ladies and gentlemen, pick on somebody your own size. This cop is a cop. He's a big guy. Really? You got to pick on an 8-year-old autistic kid? Really? That is not going to fare well for Mr. Valva when he is in custody. One, because he's a police officer, and two, because he's picking on little kids. There is a hierarchy in prison, and yes, even the worst among the society still have a code, and that code is you don't hurt children. Good luck, Mr. Valva. We'll be following your case. Next on the docket, let's briefly talk about the Kobe Bryant case. Now, a lot of people have been giving their condolences for Kobe Bryant's death, as well they should have. He is going to be known as an individual, as one of the best basketball players of all time. An NBA pro for 20 seasons. He's won gold medals for USA Basketball, and he has also done charitable things. Now, a lot of people may not recall, but Kobe Bryant had a little case here in Colorado. The case never went to trial because the prosecution was unable to proceed in the allegations alleging a sexual assault. The firm that represented Mr. Bryant for that trial is still here, a very, very good firm with very, very good attorneys. In fact, Pamela Mackey was one of the attorneys for Mr. Bryant. I am not trying to do anything to disparage Mr. Bryant in any way, but it is, in fact, a fact. He was charged, but the charges were dismissed. It'll always be a blemish. I've seen people post information about that case, basically saying, let's not forget that he had this little blemish. It looks like whatever happened and he got out of that particular situation, he's tried to do a lot of redemption for children and females, and been a big advocate for females. He has, I believe, 4 daughters, so maybe that's karma. And once you have young daughters, you obviously do not want them to be mistreated in any way, and you do not want anyone to treat them other than with complete and absolute respect. And it looks as though Mr. Bryant got that message, and from what we can also tell, never put himself in that dangerous situation again. Now, there's also been talk of whether there's any sort of liability for the helicopter crash that Mr. Bryant was in. For those of you who do not know, I fly. I am a commercial multi-engine instrument-rated pilot. And although I do not fly helicopters, I have flown in many, many of them to know that they are dangerous vehicles. All right. I was in Hawaii over Christmas, and our helicopter ride actually was canceled due to the weather. And then there was the accident on Kauai where I think 5 people died in the helicopter accident, maybe 7, I think it was. And then ultimately still went on the helicopter ride, got some great pictures of it. It's amazing. But helicopters are not natural, okay? What I like about airplanes is if something goes wrong, you can glide, okay? Helicopters like to auto-rotate and you come down, and even if you land softly and you don't hit a big tree, which is nothing but a big spike sticking up from the ground, you're probably going to break your back with the force that you hit the ground. And I'm no expert. I've met enough people that have done those auto-rotate things that if it's anything less than a controlled environment, it is rather dangerous. Now, obviously, this looks like what they refer to as CFIT, controlled flight into terrain. Basically, the pilot was operating under VFR rules, visual flight rules, when he should have been in IFR rules, instrument flight rules, which is basically you fly in the clouds and you look at your instruments because you cannot see a horizon. And if anyone's ever done any flight training, even flying out into a complete darkness, if you're not following your instruments, you become disoriented. You think we're flying straight and level, and you're in fact flying right or making a turn, which ultimately you can die. Case in point, the John F. Kennedy matter, where he crashed his plane, flying from New York over to, was it Martha Vineyards or Nantucket, over the water at dark. You can't see a horizon and basically just kind of flew right into it. Not good. That looks like what's happened here, probably pilot error. And unless there was some sort of mechanical issue that somebody knew about and completely disregarded, which I can't imagine them doing that, there's going to be no criminal liability. But the company that ultimately owns the aircraft, which is unclear whether Mr. Bryant leased it or had some sort of ownership interest in that particular aircraft, the passengers involved will have their share at any monies from the insurance from the aircraft operator. There's no exposure, from what I can tell, from Mr. Bryant's family as well. So it's tragedy all around, not only for Mr. Bryant, but the other 6 people that were actually on the airplane, on the helicopter. So wish them well for sure. All right, last on the docket, what are we going to talk about tomorrow? We're going to talk about the Aaron Hernandez documentary on Netflix. It's good, it's interesting, and I think it's even more relevant because in this very small group, we were able to talk with Jose Baez, and he gave sort of his analysis as to what he had done to help achieve the not guilty for the double homicide that Mr. Hernandez was charged with and ultimately acquitted of in both cases. So we'll talk about that tomorrow, and then maybe on the theme for the whole NFL and Super Bowl coming, I'm going to have a request for you all. So thanks for watching. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.